Hey y'all, what's up?
Hello.
Okay, we've already this season's gonna be so fun because you and I can't stop laughing while we're recording, so we'll have to see how this goes. Hello, everybody. Welcome back for season 5 of Becoming Trauma Informed.
Yes. Welcome.
Are you excited to be here?
Yeah.
Does it feel good to say welcome?
It does. It does.
Okay.
It is.
So, for those of you who maybe missed our bonus episode that we put out a little while ago, we took a little hiatus. I took a little hiatus from the Becoming Trauma Informed podcast. And all these ideas of things that I was going to create and things I was going to do. My life has been a lot of learning from experience. And sometimes I don't know that I don't want to do something until I go do it. Or I don't know that I do want to do something until I stop doing it. And isn't that so fun being married to me?
Oh, yeah. It's always an adventure. That's awesome.
We'll call it an adventure. So when I was talking to TLC after taking a break from Becoming Trauma Informed and going over and doing 6 episodes of our That's So Unprofessional YouTube show and podcast, I got to episode 5 and went, you know what? I don't think this is what I want to do. I miss becoming trauma informed. And so we were chatting one night. And for those of you who don't know TLC, I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast have been in our Institute space for a little while. So you've seen him around and about. And I talk about you a good amount. He's a really great researcher. So you have a bachelor's in psych and history.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember us talking about if you were going to go back to school again, you would go back to school to get your PhD in history. And you talked about how one of the things that you love the most is like looking at how history from, 500, 1,000, 1,500 years ago, how it's playing out today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing some of the different parallels and stuff you see just from so many different areas, so many different things, even though it's different in so many ways, it is very similar.
Yeah. And we've been having some fun conversations around, there was that big TikTok, Instagram trend of men in the Roman Empire. And I was like, y'all, I have you beat. My husband thinks about the Roman Empire constantly. He got a degree in the Roman Empire. Yeah. And, you and I have, obviously, we've been together for 20 years. We've lived together for 18. We've had so many conversations about the historical implications of what is happening in our society today. And like, I'll bring it up something medical or trauma or psychological or pop culture related. And you are so brilliant at being like, oh, did you know that in, 727 AD, like this thing happened. And like, that's actually what impacted this. And I'm like, how do you know everything about everything?
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to see things that are happening now as almost either happening in a vacuum or as being so completely novel. And I think it just kind of really misses the wider context.
Yeah.
People in history weren't, stupid. They weren't, whatever else, that they were people just like us.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that we go through now have in some similar ways people have been going through for human history. So
yeah. And so we kind of just sat down one day and I was like, it would be so cool for us to have a way to have this conversation around the past, the present, the future, how they all play and intertwine with each other, and also do it from this perspective of understanding trauma, understanding relationships, understanding how we communicate with each other, how we relate to each other, how we live with each other, how we hurt each other, how we help each other heal, how we connect and disconnect. And so, this just kind of unfolded over the last couple of months. And I remember, do you know that TikTok? And I don't know what the sound is from. I think it might be from, this is what I do, by the way. This is my hyperfixation. It might be from The Office, but it's when the guy comes up and he's like, do you want to form an alliance with me? And he's like, I do. want to form an alliance with you. Like, that's literally what happened. I was like, do you want to talk about history on a trauma podcast? And he was like, I would like you to talk about trauma while I talk about history on a podcast. And I was like, okay, like, let's do it. And so we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've always thought history is fascinating, but it is one of those, just to being interesting without any of the context or without, you know, that human element.
Yeah.
You know, really can get, especially for a lot of people, just get really boring. And
history's always been tough for me. And the times that I have just been completely riveted by what you are sharing are when you tie together things that other people I've never seen them tie together. And you're like, well, and I remember during a lot of the recent things that we've seen, like traumatic things that we've seen through the pandemic, you and I had a really passionate discussion about civil rights and marginalized populations in the United States. And we had conversations around vaccines and conversations around political decisions. And then moving further on, we've had conversations around some of the conflicts that are happening across the world right now. You and I have had conversations around parenting, around how you and I show up in relationship to one another. And whenever I bring these conversations up to other people, and in fact, our latest TikTok to go viral was me sharing 3 historical things that had happened. We talked about Freud shifting from his famous paper, The Etiology of Hysteria, and moving away from understanding trauma as not just a physical thing, but a psychological thing that happens when people are harmed. And that hysteria, like people who have severe mental health issues, that a lot of times they've had something bad happen to them. So Freud shifting away from that and going more towards the Oedipal Electra psychoanalysis, which we won't go into right now. We'll probably do that in an episode. But we talked about that. We talked about the implication of how we literally fight, how we bring soldiers back, how we integrate them back into society, how that's fundamentally changed over the last 100 years. And then we also tied together Rockefeller and Carnegie and the American Medical Association and the history of midwives and nurses and holistic medicine and herbalism and all of these things. And so we did that in like an 8-minute video. And literally people were like, when are you writing a book? Where can I learn more about this? Where's the podcast? And I was like, it's coming, I promise. So we got a lot of feedback from y'all that you thought this would be beneficial. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's exciting. There's so much. The more we understand about things, the more you can really look at things. It's not that we understand how things happen, but things were happening then. They may not have understood it at the time. They may not have understood what trauma was, but in some ways they had some understanding, but it was still happening the same way that it's happening now.
Yeah.
So the better we understand, the better we can really understand what has happened, better move forward.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about, we're going to have some guests on who are doing some really cool things. We're going to be talking a lot more about men too. And, you know, we've had this conversation in some of our spaces, and it's been a little scary to say this of like, hey, we're going to be talking about men and trauma, because if you look at history right now, the history that is being created in the current moment, it sounds a little weird, but that's kind of an edgy topic to go there, is to have these conversations around, you know, men are really, really hurting right now. And that might even be activating for people to hear me say that just in this trailer, because a lot of conversation is happening around how people who hold traditionally viewed privileged positions, we don't look at them as people who are traumatized. And that, if that's not history repeating itself, I don't know what is. And so one of the things we're going to explore throughout a lot of the episodes through here is, how are we repeating patterns that we can look back and go, you know what, we've already seen how this goes. We've already played this game. We've made this chess move. So what if and hear me out, we actually look at this from a proactive perspective and go, look, if we use the data we've got, we know that this isn't the move that's going to help us.
Yeah, really seeing that longer view. Really
Yeah.
seeing, how has this worked? Have we tried this?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it really depends, but sometimes we have tried this and we've realized, oh, this was the issue before. That issue doesn't necessarily just go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that is just coming to mind right now is younger people, right? They learn of an injustice that's happening, or they learn of something that's going on, and they're like, oh my gosh, like we need to take to the streets, or we need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, y'all, here is my invitation to you. There are some elders who have been on this earth for like 30 to 40 more years. There are some books, there are some things, there are some resources for you. You're about to redo a lot of work that's already been done. And if we can take that historical perspective to this, that's going to benefit your cause even further, because you're not going to have to redo work that's already been done.
Yeah, because things are fixable.
Yeah.
And again, people have been trying to fix some of these same issues for a while. Yeah. It makes sense. You want to really take the best of what has happened and really move from there.
Yeah. The last piece that I want to bring in here is, for those of you who are new to our podcast, everybody calls me Dr. Lee. You can call me Lee. If we meet each other in person, I don't need you to call me Dr. Lee. I don't have a complex about it or anything. And people call me Dr. Lee. So I'll have people come up and they're like, Dr. Lee, like, what's the doctor stand for? Well, I'm a nurse practitioner. I have a doctorate in nursing practice. And the thing about being a doctor of nursing practice is our primary focus is we're coming from the perspective of nursing, and we are practicing something called evidence-based practice. And evidence-based practice is really the lens that we're going to use when we talk about issues on this podcast, when we talk about topics on this podcast. So like evidence-based, it's what the research and the science says. It's what our personal and communal experience, so like our clinical expertise, what have we already learned? What have we already gathered from an information perspective that is from direct experience and from, watching other people. And then the third piece is something we call patient and family preference when you're talking in a nursing perspective. When you take this to the broader conversation of trauma in general, it's, look, we got to have a communal perspective and an individualized approach. So when we have these conversations, if we're using generalizations like men and women, that doesn't mean all men and all women. It means that when you look at the group of humans that identify as men or the group of humans that identify as women, general things that we hear from them. This is what we see scientifically in the majority or the vast majority of people. And every single person is different. And, TLC and I have talked about this publicly. We have a kiddo that identifies as non-binary. We have, I'm a multi-racial human. You're a first-generation college student. There are a lot of identities and that we hold and that people who are near and dear to us hold. And we think it's really important to have this conversation collectively and to also then go, and it's nuanced because every single person has had a different experience on this planet.
Yeah. Humans are fascinating in that, and that genetically speaking, everything, we are very, very, very similar.
Yeah.
But yet everybody is also so different in their individual person. It's what really kind of adds to so much.
Yeah. So when you listen to us, we are going to be very intentional. I can't say that we're going to be perfect about it. We're going to be really intentional about saying, hey, like, we're going to use some generalities here and there's nuance. Okay. Like, there is no topic that we are talking about on this podcast that is black or white, right or wrong, good or bad. And, we both have our own biases. And that's why I'm also excited to do this with you, because you and I, there's some overlap. Mm-hmm. Like the Venn diagram, the two circles overlap, and we see things differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have very different lived perspectives, different education, and different intersectionality. So we even joked in that when we were writing the intro, I was like, things might get a little passionate. And that is something we want to model for y'all. Of like, you can have a conversation, you can have a bit of a debate, you can have this coming together and exploring an idea with the purpose of better understanding and not the purpose of convincing the other person you're right.
Trying to learn rather than convince
every time. So TLC is going to be researching our episodes. He's going to be bringing the facts. I'm probably going to be a lot of the color commentary and occasionally adding in my my clinical expertise from the trauma and the nursing and the neuroscience perspective. And it's going to be great.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Me too. Okay. So stay tuned. If you haven't joined our pod squad, we are giving away prizes for people who are, did you know this? Yeah. I'm like, did I tell him this? Guess what, y'all? I forget to tell TLC a lot of things, a lot of times. I move quick. We're going to be giving away prizes. So if you feel excited to share about the podcast, or you're up for sharing episodes once they drop, we're going to be dropping 4 episodes on May 28th. And through the first half of June, you'll be able to share those episodes. Every time you share, you're going to get an opportunity to win some prizes. And then we're going to have some big prizes that we're raffling off at the end for everybody who shared. So if you're like, heck yeah, I like to do that. It's swag. I think it's t-shirts. There's some free trauma club memberships in there. Yeah, so lots of really fun things that you can be guaranteed to get caught if you join the pod squad, and some things that you may win if you're a lucky duck. So with that being said, we are so excited to bring you those 4 episodes on May 28th. Go ahead and click the button to subscribe so you don't miss those. They'll get auto-downloaded. And if there's anything that you'd like us to cover this season, there's this really cool new feature. If you go down to our show notes, you'll see at the very top, it says, send me a text message. We actually have this new thing through our podcast host called fan mail. And so y'all can actually reach out and you can either send me or TLC or both of us some fan mail. It'll come through as a text message and our podcast host, and we'll be able to read that. And so it's just a way for y'all to send us some notes, let us know what you're enjoying, what you'd like us to talk about, and then we can incorporate that in. So until next time.
Bye.
Are y'all ready for this? Bye. Well, bye. That was Tombstone, right? Yeah. Okay, ready? Well, bye.
Well, bye.